especially in Bath, to be quite pleasing. He grinned, seeming to know she would catch his meaning. Yet rather than wait for her response, Danby continued. I plan to be home before Christmas. In fact, this is my last stop. We travel in 2 days' time for Bristol and the ship that will bear us home. That's wonderful, Mr. Danby. Perhaps you will travel on one of my father's ships. He has the best fleet of passenger and cargo vessels. So I have been told. But alas, I am not to enjoy that pleasure. Well, then, my good fellow, you must instead enjoy the pleasures of the evening and the hospitality we can afford you, her father declared. Carter Danby eyed Catherine. I intend to do just that. Catherine felt her cheeks grow hot and quickly turned away. If you'll both excuse me, I have other guests to see to. She hurried off in the direction of her friend Elizabeth, who happened to be sharing a rather private conversation with another of their acquaintances, Mrs. Witherspoon. And that was the reason she could not be seen in good company. No one can be certain as to whether or not the poor soul was with child, but it is, of course, presumed so, Mrs. Witherspoon said, with a tone that suggested grave concern. Of course, Elizabeth said, completely horrified. She looked up at Catherine and held her hand to her throat as if the entire matter were too much. We were just discussing Lady Overton's youngest daughter. It appears the conversation is not a pleasant one, Catherine countered. Indeed it is not, Mrs. Witherspoon said, shaking her head and looking around suspiciously. It is a sad day indeed when a young lady of good reputation ruins her chances in society by dallying with a man of ill repute. Sad, too, that society would be so judgmental of her actions. Mrs. Witherspoon seemed taken aback. My dear, we all live by the judgment of our society. There is no other mark by which we can base the value of a person's character than by their actions. Be they perceived or known, Catherine replied, in a mocking voice that she hoped would put the older woman in her place. To her consternation, however, Mrs. Witherspoon nodded with great enthusiasm. To be sure, and that is why we must be very careful that we give no perceived offence. I cannot express enough the importance of that point. Catherine then watched as the two women began to smile brightly, as though the sun itself had just burst through the clouds. She turned and saw Mr. Danby. Mrs. Witherspoon, Miss Merriweather, may I present Mr. Carter Danby of America? The women curtsied and bowed their heads momentarily. Mr. Danby smiled and gave a crisp bow. Ladies, I am quite delighted. What brings you to Bath, Mr. Danby? Mrs. Witherspoon asked, her voice taking on a higher pitch in her nervousness. I am lately here on business, ma'am, but presently have come to ask Miss Newbury if she would do me the honour of a dance. Knowing that duty was more important than her own personal feelings, Catherine said, Of course, you are kind to ask. She allowed him to draw her away, the wide expanse of her silk ball gown swinging in bell-like fashion as Mr. Danby moved her to the dance floor. The music began immediately as they stepped in line with the others. Moving forward to the music, Catherine felt Danby take hold of her arm as he turned her ever so gently to the cadence. You have a beautiful home, Miss Newbury, and I find your father quite congenial. He's a good man, Catherine replied as they came apart and circled with their partner to the right. Coming back together, Danby took hold of her gloved fingers. And what of your mother? I've not yet met her. They performed the steps perfectly in unison, then again pulled apart as Catherine answered. She passed on with my younger brothers some 2 years past. It was influenza. As they rejoined after completing a series of intricate steps and turns, she found him quite sober. I am sorry, Miss Newbury. That loss must have been quite acute. Yes, she murmured. They went on in this manner, sharing little comments about the holidays and the weather. At one point, Catherine was rather surprised when he asked for her impression of America. I have none, save that which